Thank you, Gretchen. And just so that everyone's aware, we just had a conversation about having a quorum, and we do have a quorum present, so we will be going through our full agenda tonight. So thank you. Anything else to add there, Gretchen?
No, thank you so much, Jody. Appreciate it.
Okay. And so we were talking a little bit more about professional standards, and if you don't mind, I'm looking at the agenda, and if I was just wiping it away, but if we could maybe just continue the conversation, if you don't mind, about professional standards. You have a change in your office, name change is one, but tell us a little bit more about what's happening there at the police department around that office.
Well, part of it is we've needed to grow the size of that unit for a long time, and unfortunately, um, our department hasn't really grown in size in many years, and we do need more officers. But due to the fact that police officers were removed from the Salem-Keizer School District, that freed up a sergeant's position because we had a sergeant that was in charge of that unit, and so the chief reassigned that position to professional standards, so that we would have two people. I mean, we're doubling our capacity, which is certainly a step in the right direction. Part of the reason for the name change is it's not just internal complaints that they do. They do auditing and making sure that we're in compliance with directives and rules, and so it's not just internal affairs. It's really about making sure that we have a professional organization, that we have professional employees. Um, and so it's really more, the name is really more about what the unit really is. And so it's just changing that direction. And that was something that Chief Womack did shortly after being here. That was one of the things he wanted to change right away.
Thank you.
You
Do you mind? Oh, Gretchen, did you?
I just wanted you to know, yeah, Lieutenant Bales emailed me a number of documents today, and I will be sure to forward those to you. When he was speaking of, we have some information for you. I've got some information for you, so I'll be sure to forward that to the board and our guests and see. And then you can be taking a look at that, and then if you'd like, we can have that on the next agenda if there's questions or discussion about the information.
Yes, please. That would be great. Thank you. Does any of the board members have questions of Lieutenant Bales? Any of our guests have questions about the new group? Thank you. I appreciate hearing about that. And as I was mentioning, the evolution is great to see. I think the department is working to grow with the community and with the audit, and seeing some changes with the new chief. So thank you for that information.
You're very welcome.
Tonight on our agenda, we will approve our minutes from our last meeting. We do have room for public comment if anyone who is joining us has a matter that they'd like to bring forward. We do not have any reviews to go through tonight as far as any requests for review hearings. I'll tell you a little bit about the Community Police Performance Audit Update. Oni will be doing that. No, just kidding, Oni. She also, we serve on that group together. So, and then we will dive in a little bit on the case review and expectations around what that process looks like. We also, as a group, have done some brainstorming on training topics. And Gretchen, I don't know if you have that list, but maybe we could go through that list before we leave tonight, and we can make sure we have our item for next month or next quarter, please. And then there's also time on the agenda for any board member comments. So first we'll go to the approval of the minutes. And so I'll look for a board member to move to approve the minutes.
I approve.
So Erin is making a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting. I don't have the date in front of me.
It is January 12th. Wait, I think so.
And January meeting, I think, is just fine to say.
Okay.
So we have a motion to approve our minutes from our January 2021 meeting. Do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Thanks, Steve. And then I guess that means we're all in favor. Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right, and so now next on the agenda, we have room for public comment. If there's anybody that is joining us tonight that would like to take time to talk with the board, now is your opportunity. I'm also very mindful that many of you have been involved in these efforts going forward. So as we keep moving forward, I'll look to you for comment. But right now is that time for you if anyone does have any specific comments.
Chair Sherwood,
Yes, Mr. Rourke, please.
Leslie Rourke, may I just take this opportunity to ask a quick question of the lieutenant?
Please.
Lieutenant, in terms of the changes that are underway now, what is going to be the effort to keep the linkage that I've seen the SRO program as being between the department and the neighborhood associations? Are you able to address that?
Well, having involvement with youth is a huge, important priority for us. We were disappointed to have to leave the schools. We've been doing that I've been here 24 and a half years, and we've been doing it the entire time I've worked here. So I know it was before I started. We were disappointed to have to leave that, but we plan to stay involved as much as we can and as much as we're allowed to. We're really trying hard. I'm hoping that COVID will eventually slow down. We've had to pause a lot of our community programs, Neighborhood Watch, our volunteer program, our cadets. We've really had to pause that because the city's been closed, and we're trying so desperately to keep our employees as healthy as we can. But I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to restart our cadet program and really work. That there's a great law enforcement CTAC program that's part of Salem Kaiser School District, and we really want to tap into that. We've hired a lot of cadets. A lot of our cops now were former cadets. They were CSOs. We really try to do that and stay within our community and identify these kids, get them involved. That's always our goal. It's going to be challenging, but we're going to do the best we can with the opportunities we're given.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, Jody, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you both is what I started to say. And I wanted to mention just an outcome from the audit committee is, and potentially because we can join now by video, the neighborhood association chairs have gotten together and received some of the audit findings from the police audit. And that's been an open door that didn't exist before as far as those chairs getting together. So anytime there's an opportunity, it feels like the police department is trying to take that opportunity. So thank you. Any other guests that would like to have time for public comment tonight? Let's see any, so thank you. All right, so again, we have not had a request for review hearings, and it still is a surprise to me that we don't. I know that we have had situations in our community in the past, and I don't know if you have any information on the number of complaint processes that come through the Professional Standards Office, or if you have any that are going through a review internally at this time, or have all of those been resolved to the department and the individual satisfaction? Lieutenant, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind at all, but I am going to pass this one to Lance just so that he can speak to the current numbers that we have right now. We also sent information about this. This will be one of the forms that you saw in the packet that's coming your way. But Lance, if you don't mind speaking to what we have pending right now, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Lance Deedy, Sergeant of Professional Standards. We currently have 9 active formal investigations going through our process right now in various stages of the process. Some are just, we're starting to work on them. Some are being chain of command, being approved at the deputy chief, the lieutenant, chief level. So we have 9 active formal investigations. We average about, in the last several years, we've been averaging about 30 to 35 formal investigations that we do, and that's both external and internal. So we'll receive complaints externally, we receive complaints internally, and then we'll evaluate those, and then we move those to a formal investigation. And we have what's called a citizen contact, and so that's when a citizen calls in or someone calls in, and they might have a question about our processes, or they might have a complaint that they don't want to file a formal complaint on, but they want to bring to our attention. and then we'll do what's called a citizen contact. We'll still investigate that. That can still lead to like us having conversations with the officer about what occurred, and then dealing with the issue, but it just doesn't rise to the level of a formal complaint. We average anywhere from 125 to 175 citizen contacts a year.
In a year. Interesting.
Yes. And oftentimes a citizen contact might be a question. Like as an example, I've had people contact us and ask questions about, they might have witnessed an officer running lights and sirens to an event.
Oh.
And they saw the officer go through a red light and they were concerned about it. They wanted to bring it to our attention. And so we would address that and look into the issue and then have that conversation with the person who called in and kind of explain the events and why we were doing it. So we use it for educational purposes as well.
And
Thank you.
One
Please.
thing I'd like to add, if I could, I'm sorry. Part of the reason with the evolution of this new internal affairs software that we went to, we wanted to make sure that we were tracking when people call in. So like Lance, I just want to express what Lance is talking about. So even if it's just a question and it really isn't a complaint and it isn't going anywhere, they just want some verification of something. We want to make sure we're documenting these so that we're completely transparent about people call in. These are the issues they're calling in for. It may not turn into a complaint. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is, even if a citizen calls in and they give us information, but they're adamant they don't want to complain, but it appears on the face from what they're telling us that there's a policy violation, we make it an investigation anyway, so that even if the citizen's adamant they don't want to file a complaint, if they're telling us about clear directive policy violations, we're going to address them and we're going to investigate them anyway once we become aware of the information. So I just wanted to chime in and add to what Lance was saying on that.
Thank you. And thank you, Sergeant. Anybody have any questions around that? Board members? I'm curious, something that we do bring up periodically throughout the year is how citizens know and understand that this group exists for them, that if they're unsatisfied with their process with the police department, that they have the ability to come through a citizen review board. Is that, could you help us understand more about that process? We understand there's been a pamphlet that on the website, the information is there, but is there a step inside the process where information is passed forward?
Sorry, I was trying to get myself unmuted. Yes. So when somebody files a complaint, we always send them a complaint acknowledgement letter. And within the letter, we start the whole process of giving the information about the Citizens Review Board. Even when just on the initial complaint, on our forms, plus on the website, it talks about if you don't feel comfortable contacting the police to file a complaint, we direct them to Gretchen in the city manager's office, and there's a phone number listed. So we try to make it as easy as possible for people to make sure that they feel heard and they're getting their information out there. And Gretchen does a fantastic job funneling that stuff either to me or directly to one of the sergeants so that we make sure that we have the information and then we can investigate it. We take complaints anonymously. You don't have to be named. We prefer if you are, because it helps us. Usually we have questions based on the information they give us, and it helps if they're willing to talk to us, but we take anonymous complaints. We take third-party complaints. We take all complaints. We don't turn them away. And based on the information, then we investigate them. So, but from the very beginning to the end of the process, and at the end, we give them a complaint conclusion letter that explains we've investigated your complaint. We give them the results. We can't get into specific details of what we're doing to the officer because that would violate their rights, and there's some issues there. But and then include another pamphlet that says, if you want to appeal your complaint, this is the process. This is what you have to do. This is who you contact. So it's very much on Front Street, how you can file a complaint, who you can contact if you don't feel comfortable contacting the police, and then certainly how you can appeal any of that.
Thank you. Okay. We are now,
Wait,
Erin,
sorry.
yes.
Sorry. So I have a question. So once a complaint is filed, does the officer know who is complaining about them if they put their name in? Because I've had like citizens say, well, I don't want to complain because of retaliation, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what to say, because, what if those officers or a officer finds out who I am, and they don't want their names out there to the officer. So does the officer know who has filed that complaint?
As a general rule, yes, they're gonna find out eventually who the complainant is.
Mhm.
If there is a citizen that's uncomfortable contacting the police, they could certainly talk to Gretchen, call up to the
Right.
city manager's office and get the information. Depending on the type of complaint, we have not released who the complainant was. It really kind of depends. I'm trying to think of an easy example, but there's certainly been times where I'm listed as the complainant because I got the information. The citizen didn't want to file a complaint, but based on the information, I knew it had to be a complaint and we were going to investigate it. So then I made myself the complainant, and then I gave it to one of my sergeants to investigate. So most cases, yes, we do, and because they have a union contract, they're in a bargaining unit, and
Mhm.
the contract dictates that process. And it talks about they get a copy of the complaint, which means they would normally, under normal circumstances, know who the complainant is. But there's certainly certain circumstances with a hostile work environment type complaints, harassment type complaints. Victims have rights there, and there's some protection built in with that. So there are some times. I'm hoping I'm answering your question, but
Yeah.
they're going to know who the complainant is.
Do you like tell people, citizens, when they are filing, that these officers are going to know, or you just don't tell them?
Well,
Does that make sense?
yeah, it does. We certainly don't shy away from that. I mean, we tell them if you are filing a complaint.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, one thing I would say is we have more internal complaints than external complaints, which says something about the fact that we're policing ourselves. But most of the time, when folks fill out a complaint, they're sending an email, they're writing something down,
Mhm.
submitting it, and they're signing their name and they're putting their information. And obviously we're following up with them. So then we know who they are, and obviously they gave us the information to know.
Right.
I don't know that we specifically say that. I think it's kind of known unless they tell us, look, I do not want to be named. And if they don't want to be named, but provide us information that we feel could rise to a policy violation, we're going to investigate it, even if they don't give us their name.
Right. That makes sense. So, yeah. Okay.
One more thing to add, I'm sorry, and then I'll stop, is I don't ever want somebody to be afraid to call because they're afraid of retaliation. I mean, yes, I'm just saying it, I'm a lieutenant, but we wouldn't tolerate any of that kind of behavior within our police department. If somebody started to harass somebody, if there was any kind of retaliation behavior, we would very, very quickly and swiftly deal with that so that stops.
Mhm. Right. And I've talked to a couple citizens via Facebook who have put stuff out there, and then I told them who I was and yada yada. And I told them how, you can make complaints, some are like, oh, I didn't even know this. And I'm like, and so I direct them to where they need to go and stuff, and say, if you need help, let me know, but I think the most part is, I think they hear it, well, of course they hear it from maybe the news or the family members or whatever it may be, that, oh, this officer might retaliate against me. But I definitely encourage our citizens, to step forward, and, because that's how you guys are going to help your officers, and if you don't know what's going on, then how are you going to help them? So yeah, I've talked to Gretchen about a couple of things too, and she's helped me advise what to say and what not to say, so that's been helpful. So I guess I just feel like our citizens may need to know more that it's okay to do that and not be worried or whatnot, you know. So I just try to help in any way I can. And it, you know, it's up to them to do what they want to do. So, you know, but the more information that I learn from you guys, the better, you know, we as the board could tell the citizens too, you know. So, yeah.
No, we appreciate that. You hit the nail on the head. We want to know.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just training issues. Sometimes it's bad behavior and it's people that shouldn't be in our profession. And I can promise you, we don't want people we don't want to work with people. We don't want them wearing
Right.
the uniform of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I just do, you know, I mean, I had one incident where a lady did, you know, put stuff on Facebook, and I reached out to her and I said, you know, here, do you know about this? Or you can call, you know, and here how to get, and I said, leave your phone number, you know, and your name so they can contact you, you know, because if you don't, then they don't know who to call, you know. And so, you know, and she was very thankful. And I said, you know, reach out to me if you need anything else, you know. So, but again, it's up to them to decide what to do. And, you know, and, but I definitely encourage, you know, on their part, on our part and your guys' part to do it. But, you know, but like I said, just learning more about it from you guys helps me, you know, relate and talk to our citizens. So that's kind of my goal, is to being on here now, you know, as the vice chair, is to not have our citizens be so scared, you know. So, and reach out, but you can only do so little. So
Yeah, we appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Thanks for helping be that bridge.
You're welcome.
I am looking forward to looking at the data that will be sent soon, and next month I'm sure that we'll be talking that through some more and understanding the demographics around the data. Hopefully we'll be there, and sounds like a new office will have some more information on how things are going for your group as well. So. All right, so quick update on the audit. Board members know that the audit has been ongoing since October. As I mentioned, Oni and I actually serve on the audit committee. We meet again in, I believe, 2 weeks. We have had a final draft audit. We had a work session with the city council, and we will be finalizing the audit findings at our next meeting. We may have one more after that, but I think that we're at the closure, at least of the audit. And we also will have some conversation about what happens next. Now that we have the audit, how can we check in? How can we support? How can we learn more about how the findings of the audit have evolved, and what supports might be needed around helping develop some of the audit follow-ups. So more to come on that. I believe Gretchen has done a great job in keeping the members informed when something is available to see. So she'll probably send another email to board members letting you know about the next audit iteration that we'll see. We'll see the final draft. That'll be shared as well. And I'm sure it'll be shared somewhere on the city website at some point too. So anybody have any questions around the audit? Or Oni, please, anything you'd like to add?
I don't, not at this time. I mean, like you said, we're focused on the next steps. We've done a lot of work's been gathered, a lot of information has been gathered together, and trying to create some next steps. So we're at the how are we going to implement this? What's it going to look like in our community? What's it going to look like in building relationships? So I'm excited.
Thank you. As it sounds like we're trying to open more doors, the audit board members have worked really hard to make sure that groups that we're associated with, that we know about, individuals have an opportunity to be involved in the audit. And I think it's fair to say hundreds and hundreds of individuals have participated in the process. And there have been some difficult and some helpful conversations to help so that made sure everyone is around the table to have the conversations we need to as a community. So we will be talking about that too at our next meeting as we get to the end of the audit findings.
Chair Sherwood,
Yes, Mr. Rourke.
would you indulge in a question regarding the audit?
You bet.
And I don't mean to unnecessarily take up the time of the committee, but I would like to learn from your perspective as the chair and also Aaron's. What parallels do you see in terms of the positives versus the negatives between Salem's review board situation and what's ongoing in Portland? And I ask that because I think the Portland situation obviously is what a lot of folks around the state are looking at, but I'm also looking at and seeing the progressive manner that Salem is proceeding in. And so that's why I was just curious.
Yeah, thank you for that question. From my perspective, I think we're two different communities, although we can both learn from each other. I think our audit is focused on the future of where we're headed as a community and expectations that we have around community engagement and what that looks like and what we'd like to see moving forward. Aaron, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Oh, no, I agree with you, Jody. I mean, yeah.
There are two different, I'm not as familiar, of course, with what Portland has for a Community Police Review Board. I believe that they are much more involved in, their scope of work is much larger than ours. Ours is pretty specific in the city ordinance for what we do and how we do it. I think that through the audit, we found that there might be more of an opportunity to have more citizen and community involvement. So I think you'll start to see that as things evolve, which I think does marry more closely to what's happening in the Portland groups that they have that are their governance groups. But again, I'm not as aware and as familiar of those.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. And we are going to move on to our case review process, a walkthrough. And Mark, I think I think you're helping us. Gretchen actually is, right? Mark and Gretchen basically will. And we will do a light touch if we could tonight, just about the process. I wonder if it would be good to help folks understand more about when we do have a case review, we may meet separately. We may, at any time that we don't just wait for our 4 meetings a year to do that. Gretchen lets us know and we would gather separately. We've had a couple starts on case reviews, but something usually happens in the process where the individual either withdraws their complaint or is satisfied through a process working with the police department. But this is the part where I believe we are, maybe that comparison to Portland comes in. We have a neutral responsibility to look at the information as community members. We are not here representing the department. We are not here representing the city. We are representing the community around the laws and the rules and the regulations that govern the process on why on the complaint itself. So, Gretchen, do you have anything to add on that, or Mark, anything you'd like to add about our scope of work?
I think that's absolutely correct, Jody. It's interesting how quickly you kind of get into clarifying what is the ordinance or the statute that surrounds the topic. You know, the last complete review we did, for example, was around trespassing off of private property. So pretty quickly, the board members had questions about, well, what are the laws related to trespass, and what are the obligations of the police? What are the rights and opportunities of the community members who are involved? And so you get pretty quickly into learning a bit about that. That's right. And you're right, Jody, something else to just point out. Like, for example, you're meeting today. You're not scheduled to meet again until July. Tomorrow, if I receive a request for a case review, I would reach out to all of you and do a little scheduling poll and figure out when I can gather you, because we wouldn't wait just until the next quarterly meeting. So the board is called upon to do additional meetings upon request. If I get, like, if I would have gotten a case review request last week, I just would have capitalized on the fact that I have y'all already this week. So it just depends on how far away from the meeting it is. So that's right. Mark, did you want to add anything to that?
I don't have anything to add at this time.
Great. Well, the case reviews, you know, as they come in, sometimes it might come in a pretty straightforward way, like as a person would submit the request, or they are tracking and they see, okay, they've been through the process at the professional standards office and they've received indication from internal affairs about how that investigation went, and they disagree. So they would come to us and say, we'd like you to take a look at that. So we gather some information, we listen and talk with them about what's involved in this, in our process. We share information about the board, including the bylaws, and provide a little overview to the person so that they're aware about what's involved, and make sure I check in and make sure that it's a match for the person. I haven't had very many of these conversations. It doesn't come up very much. But when it does, that would be a part of the process, is to help them know, you know, who you are and what you're here to do. Then you would receive some information in advance. We notify the police department that we've received the request and gather a bit of information from them, as well as we have the complainants information of what they write to us. They put in a document what is their concern and what is it that, what's the substance of their disagreement. And so we give all of that to you, and we gather in a board meeting. I attached to your email an example of the way it flows. So if you want to, you can read through the email, but when we all arrive and we gather, you'll have in the meeting, the person is invited who has submitted the complaint, and they're able to bring a couple of people with them who might want to share comments as witnesses, if you will. And then we also have the police department is welcome either to have that officer who is involved in the complaint or a representative. It's just however that officer would like it to be. So you'll have representatives of both groups there. At the beginning, the chair would provide some introductory remarks that just kind of helps everybody be aware of who we are and what we do. Again, we're in a public meeting context, so that's good to be aware of. The chair moves through, you know, how the purpose of the conversation is to receive testimony, you know, hear from people and be able to ask questions. The chair also tries to set the stage that we're intending for it to be informal and non-confrontational, and we just ask everybody to, you know, listen and not interrupt, and just sort of we ask for that general sort of decorum. The introductions are shared, so you kind of know who's who and you're able to kind of see who's in the room. The chair reads an introductory statement that came from the person submitting the complaint. So we kind of have that beginning, as after the introductory stuff, they would read the summary of the complaint. And then the witnesses are excluded. So we have to operate a little bit of a waiting room. So we have people kind of go out into the lobby and wait. And we have the complainant first, and the complainant is able to share their thoughts and talk to you directly about what they think and what their information is. And then board members, you all have the opportunity to ask questions of them. And that's a really good time to clarify things, clarify statements, ask for more detail on particular things. I forgot to say that the chair would also first ask for a quick oath of truthfulness, though the phrase is something to the effect of, like, let's say it's Aaron that we're talking to. We'd say, Aaron, do you agree your statements will be true and honest? And we ask them to reply yes, just to establish that that's the expectation. So then we turn to Then we welcome the witnesses in, and we do a similar thing with the witnesses, invite them to share their thoughts, and you ask them questions. Then we hear from the police or their representative. In the one that I presided over, the officer elected not to attend in the, at the time, internal affairs sergeant, it was titled, who had conducted the investigation, came and spoke and kind of laid out the issues that they had seen. Questions are, you know, there's an opportunity for the officer or their designee to receive questions as well. Then the board closes the public part of the meeting and transfers into an executive session, which is not accessible to the public. And Mark and I are the staff who are present in the room along with the board members. And that's an opportunity for the board to have deliberation, to have some discussion. What they don't do, what the board does not do in executive session is make decisions. You don't come to a conclusion. So then when you're done kind of deliberating, you might come out of it and realize that you have more questions. So if the witnesses are still there, you might call back the witnesses and ask them more questions, or you might decide to hold another meeting, say the next week if they've left, and bring people back and ask more questions. Or you might deliberate and you find a lot of clarity and you come out of the meeting and then you vote in the public meeting. And you're essentially doing two things. You're voting on whether you agree or disagree with the conclusions of the professional standards department. And a second thing you're doing is, are there any other comments or recommendations you might want to make? You might say, for example, you disagree with the findings of the department and you would like more information about a particular policy. Or you might say you agree with the findings of the professional standards department and you recommend information about the subject matter be shared with the community because you think there's not enough public education on the topic, or whatever it might be. That information is then made available at a future meeting. You develop a letter as a result of your decision. I kind of draft a letter for the chair, and then that letter that summarizes your conclusions is read at the next meeting and then provided to the complainant and the officer and the city manager and the chief of police so that everybody has that information. So that's kind of that high level, high point experience of what it is. And it can go quickly or it can go real long, depending on how complicated the conversations are, you know, and how confusing the information is or how straightforward it is, the nature of the complaint, those kinds of things. So I think that's what I'd have by way of overall remarks. I don't know if anyone would have anything to add or any questions.
Any questions? And I'm curious, just as a reminder, the recommendations go to the city manager?
They do. They go both to the city manager and to the chief of police.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How long have you, I mean, how long was the longest one you've had before?
Well, I've personally only been involved in two. And the one that went all the way from beginning to end, I want to say took approximately 3 to 4 months.
Wow.
We had several meetings in the course of that time. And it generated a lot of discussion about the precise role in trespass. It was a trespass situation. The other case I was involved in, we related to, there was a person at a private residence and the person was entering the property through some force and an officer was present. And so the complaint related to whether or not the officer was appropriate in the interactions with that person who was entering the property. And so it got into the rights of property owners and who has a right to property and that kind of a thing. And in that situation, the person started to express intent to sue instead. And that's something that we always have to pay attention to because our bylaws direct us if the complainant expresses an intent to sue or files a tort claim, then it would be important for us to pause our process because our process can end up undermining or interfering with any sort of court proceeding. And so the board voted to pause or pend their work pending any sort of process there. So we didn't get very far in. It was, we all got there and gathered and began a conversation, and then we needed to pause it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little difficult because it was about also reimbursement for the damages. So we did get into, we were prepared to get into some details if necessary. So thank you, Gretchen. That's a really good rundown. I really appreciate that.
Yes,
other
thank you.
questions? Sorry.
And that's actually a good point, Jody, that I might comment on is sometimes what people are seeking is a financial reimbursement for a cost they feel is owed to them. And so we do have our Community Police Review Board, but the city also has a claims process where if someone feels that the city owes money to them, and so sometimes that's the process that ends up making sense for them. I talked with someone maybe a year or so ago whose car window was broken into during a situation, and they felt that they were owed the replacement of that vehicle window. And they didn't really want anyone reviewing. They didn't want to file a complaint. They just wanted someone to replace the cost of their window. And so that conversation was looked at by our risk department, and they evaluated all of the rules and laws that relate to that. So we have a couple of different processes available to community members. And so I try to understand what the person's objective is or what their hope is, you know, and then help guide them accordingly. But I always make them aware of everything that's available to them.
And so if someone requested to have an interpreter or other language assistance, that would be something the city would provide during that process?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would set that up.
Great. Other questions? Thank you, Gretchen. I could imagine us looking at the details again of the information that we'll receive and having a brainstorming session next time about what may need to be improved or what may need to be looked at in the process, since we're talking it through in much more detail and have some data to take a look at. So
sounds good. As you'll be looking at that mock kind of hearing format that I emailed you, you might also, if you really want to get into it, take a look at the bylaws, because the bylaws also do a really nice job of, I've never seen longer bylaws. I've staffed boards for 30 years and I've never seen a longer set of bylaws. They do a really nice job of going step by step into precisely when what happens and timelines and when who gets what letter. So you might find that interesting too.
I'm glad you mentioned that. The bylaws, depending on where we head as a group, perhaps those bylaws maybe need to be revisited too, since it's probably been a while, but they are step by step, almost a little too much because you get a little tripped up in some of it. But you know, if and when we do have a hearing, I'm very mindful that this is a difficult time for somebody to come forward. And so trying to remove that process as much as possible and having it be a tabletop conversation is really important to me. And I'm sure it is to other board members.
I'm going to be sick the day that we go review the bylaws. Sorry, I got a cold.
Thank you, Erin. We'll be meeting at your house then.
Yay! No.
All right, so we board members were also asked for future training topics, and it sounds like maybe next time we'll have quite a bit to talk about, but perhaps there's an opportunity to slip in a training topic. And Gretchen, do you have that list? Do you mind reviewing that list with us?
I do. So the ideas that came out were the K-9 unit, public meeting law and public records, assessing invisible disabilities on scene. So knowing when a person may have a disability that's not readily apparent. Sorting out civil versus criminal matters. Just took a call on that today. You know, a person would see something as criminal in nature, but are hearing that it's civil instead, and sorting that out. Another topic is behavioral health. Another topic that folks were interested in is having an overview of the complaints process, including community communications. And we did a little bit of that tonight. And then the last idea was SWOT, what's new and what's different in SWOT. But those are the ideas that came out of the survey we did.
Great, thank you. I wonder, depending on if board members take a look at the material, send any questions and information you have to Gretchen. We'll see how much time on the agenda we'll have available. And perhaps there's a couple of those that Aaron and I can maybe talk through about still having an agenda item with some training in it when we come together in July. So surely sounds like some of those about how we do have the relationships and how we do some of our assessments may be a good conversation for us to have at this time. So does that sound fair, board members?
Yes.
So, and one thing, if you didn't know, if I may,
Please.
if you were interested in SWAT, the SWAT commander is Matt Riddle, who's on this meeting, and also in professional standards. So he's very well versed to cover anything you want on that topic.
Excellent.
Nice.
I see an opportunity. Must be Sergeant Riddle because he's shaking his head.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
I knew we had to give him an assignment tonight.
We had to give someone something to do. Jeez.
He's the newest sergeant. I wasn't going to let him get off the meeting without.
He's the quietest one here too.
All right, so now is the time for any board members. Do you have any comments that you'd like to offer to the group tonight before we adjourn?
Well, you and Gretchen and I were emailing back and forth about, because we can't do ride-alongs, seeing if we could, I don't know, do some kind of still connecting with our police officers. So I'm not, I think if we do, I think we still should do that, have that connection with you guys. I think it's really important. And even if we can't go to your really fancy building, we could do a video chat or something. I think we still need to keep that going, even though COVID's going on. Yes.
Thanks, Erin. I might offer a little background for those of you who might be newer. It's traditional and required in our bylaws that all board members go on 2 ride-alongs with officers a year to just help get background and avail themselves of information. And those were all suspended during COVID. So we've suspended the requirement. But Erin's point is, well, how else could we still be able to have information or connect? Maybe video chat or phone call availability or something I'm hearing you say, if you had questions or wanted to connect in that way.
I just think it's, like I said, I think it's still important. I miss the ride-alongs, don't get me wrong, but I think it's still important for us board members to have that connection, in some way, shape, or form. So.
Yeah, absolutely, Erin. And thanks for reminding of that. You're very good at that, and it's much appreciated.
Thanks.
We do need to keep that on the table, and potentially July we could meet in the building. I mean, let's keep that door open, right? So just in case, if health allows and the rules allow. So.
Yeah. Thank
you. Any other board members?
Yes, I have a question. Is Salem working on an alternate response team for people with mental disturbances, mental disabilities, like Portland and Eugene apparently have?
Yeah, I actually can take that question, Steve, because that was my 4 o'clock meeting today. The city council directed staff to do some research on what a mobile crisis unit similar to the model in Eugene called Cahoots, or what Portland's just recently announced doing, could look like in Salem. And so per that council direction, we've been walking through with community partners what's the current makeup of mobile response in Salem. We currently have mobile crisis response teams that includes county behavioral health and law enforcement that respond in certain situations. Last year, our Northwest Human Services began doing a medical street-based team. What do they call it? I forget the name, but a medically based street response that's available. Ryan and I have been working on that with our partners and trying to dissect the current makeup of response, identifying what the gaps are, and then what would what would it look like to fill the gaps? What would those services look like? How would it interface? What would it cost? So we're in the midst of that analysis right now. Ryan, would you have anything to add on that?
Oh, no, I think you explained it super well.
Great, that's great to hear. Anything else, Steve?
No, I'm glad that they're looking at it. I think that it's important.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, and it's good to see you. It's we only see ourselves 4 times a year, right? So it's always a good opportunity to see everybody. All right, I think we are at the end of our agenda. I really want to thank the members of the police department for joining us today. Appreciate the discussion and the conversation. Learned quite a bit more here tonight than we have for a while. So I'm very appreciative of that, very appreciative to hear the forward thinking and changes that are going on, and hope that we can continue having you join us in the future. I think it's important for information sharing and making sure we can ask questions and learn and understand. We want to we're here for a reason. We want to be available for community members if they need us. And it's important to all of us to be as up to speed on happenings so that we can be as available as possible. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we appreciate you guys and spending the time that you do and the commitment you're making to be on this board. And I look forward to the next meeting, to hearing your guys' comments and feedback. And if you have comments and feedback before then, please send it to Gretchen. I'm sure she'll get it to us. But I look forward to the discussion after you get to digest the stuff that we've sent you.
Thank you.
And I'll send that tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to the guests that join us. Oni, appreciate always your interest. Leah, so nice to meet you today. And Mr. Rourke, thanks for joining us from across the mountain. We're sending you some wind, so be ready. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Just one more
I would like
thing.
to thank you and certainly echo your comments regarding the department.
Thank you. I heard Steve say he had one more thing.
One more thing. I'd like to congratulate Ben on his promotion and
Yes.
Matt on his promotion. They've come a long ways.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Steve.
All right, great. Well, I think that we will adjourn. Thank you all very much. Thanks, Gretchen.